Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm taking a look at something very interesting. This right here is a silver-plated Gundam that could be or may not be a little bit of a nightmare to build. This right here is the high-grade Delta Zayin from Mobile Suit Gundam Silver Phantom. Now, just in case you don't know what Silver Phantom is, it is a interactive virtual reality film in the Gundam media franchise, co-produced by Sunrise, a division of Bandai Namco Filmworks, and French immersive studio Atlas V for the Meta Quest platform. Set in the Universal Century timeline during UC 0096, it's the first full-length Gundam title produced specifically for immersive VR, combining traditional Japanese anime production methods with interactive, branching path storytelling. At least, that's what it says on Wikipedia. As far as I know, this kit right here wasn't exclusive, so if you are finding it hard to grab one of your own and you do want one of these, then you can get yours exactly where I got mine, which is through Buyee. Anyway, let's jump right on in to that build. Alright, so now jumping on into the build, and you might have noticed at this point I'm trying to do daily videos because it's time to get rid of that backlog. My mindset is if I do a daily video all the way until Christmas, I will get a good 50 kits off of that backlog, and that is quite the goal. So far I've done a 30-minute missions Iglite, the high-grade Messer Mine Layer, the high-grade Vargil with the Gundam head, and yesterday I built a whole bunch of action bases, so not quite a Gundam kit, but still a little bit of a build. Right now for this little bit of an attack on the backlog, I'm going with the code name Buildmas, aka trying to build as many kits as I can before Christmas hits. Also, I will mention at this point, if you do want to support the channel, you can do so over on Patreon. I would love to have you on board. The manual in here looking nice, not your standard Gundam UC style manual whatsoever. It also says that this is an updated version of the Delta Plus. There is the information around back about all of the weapons and equipment. So very Zeta coded, very Delta Plus looking, and again, this is a kit with a whole ton of silver-plated parts in it. How many runners are we looking at in here? Seems like 12, and we do have a runner of polycaps in here. So this right here is an older style, high-grade build. Whew, if you just saw what just happened there, you're gonna, well, it leads right on into one thing that I need to say. Plated kits like this are usually not the greatest. They're a little bit of a nightmare. In the end, they do look reasonably cool, but they do have two big issues. When I open that, this runner just absolutely cracked because this is super brittle plastic. Whatever plastic Bandai used to plate is always super brittle, so the dangers of breaking the kit are quite high. On top of that, when you do chop out the nubs, it's usually going to show the color underneath. Now, thankfully, this seems to be in a white or gray underneath, not in what we were seeing on, say, the likes of gold kits like the Phoenix, where it's black underneath. So when you nip with your nipper, you've got a little bit of a nub showing, and it usually shows through black. On this, it looks like it mightn't be so bad. Interesting. So yeah, once you do get all the runners out, it's not that crazy a pile of plastic as it looked in the box. Basically, there's a lot of extra packaging around the silver, so the silver does not scratch off each other, so they're individually wrapped, basically. Also, I did realize something just there, that I really should get a pair of cotton gloves or something like that for doing these reviews, because this is going to be a fingerprint magnet. Maybe not so much. This isn't a kind of fully gloss kind of shine on here. This is almost like a brushed titanium kind of look. Okay, this is a little more interesting than I thought it would be. Maybe I left it on the backlog too long. So when it comes to stickers in here, we've got a fairly big sheet. Some of them are actually silver, which I think is kind of funny in a nearly all silver kit. The rest seem to be just eye stickers and some little black details. We also have this right here, which seems to be a little bit of a decal. As for the tools I'm going to be using in the build, I'm going to be using a God Hand Nipper, as well as an Olfa cutting knife. Or should I say a Olfa hobby knife, and this right here is an Olfa cutting mat. Man, you really know when you've got an older Gundam kit when the A runners are not the multicolor runner. This is based on the Delta Gundam from 2012. Just snipping on through it now to realize that this is one of those kind of chimeric or hybrid kits. We've got two D runners in here. One is from the Delta Gundam, not the Delta Plus, the Delta Gundam, and the other one right here is from the Zeta Gundam. So this is a mix of the Delta Gundam, Delta Plus, and the Zeta Gundam. So when it does come to the build right here, there is a couple of things that strike me straight away. First off, this is a polycap heavy build, and I mean heavy. This isn't your small batch of polycaps, this is your big old school one. I'm just on the legs, and I've stripped a lot off it already. Pretty much every single little bit you're going to be building, you're popping in a rubbery little polycap. Now again, I'm not too hating on this silver. It's a nice kind of silver, and the nubbing's not too bad. A lot of it is undergated, so when Bandai designed the high-grade Delta, they definitely made sure it was ready for a coating like this. So each element builds up with some polycaps, and then you just sandwich them together in between two pieces. So there is all the elements that will make up the leg. So it is the kind of old school high grade way. It's a bunch of polycaps inside here, and everything just attaches into those polycap joints, just like that. Same with the upper leg and with the hip joint, which is just kind of locked in there, so you're going to get no upper leg rotation. Again, that's silver. Not bad. So when it does come to the build of the waist unit in here, it's a little bit on the uninspired old school side. There are some definite downsides to this. We do have ball joint hips, which is always a sad point because that does limit the articulation, especially with the cups we saw on the upper legs. I saw a little bit of a flash on the parts, which is something you rarely ever see on Gunpla, and then everything just kind of builds up in a fairly simplistic, yet thankfully solid kind of way. This is what you get in the end. Again, I'm digging that silver. It's got the brushed look, so it's not entirely mirrored. We've got some moving side skirts and some moving front skirts. These are a little bit on the floppy side, but not too much. The butt flap doesn't really do much. And again, like I mentioned, ball joint hips, which will limit the articulation. Next up in here is the torso, and this is kind of shocking because I'm used to more modern kits where there's a lot of the build in the torso, just like the legs. The torso has a lot going on usually. In these old school high grades, there's next to nothing. You throw a few polycaps in, a neck joint, a little bit of armor, and you're literally done. This right here is what you end up with, and it is just a little brick. It doesn't move at all. It's just a block. Also, the shoulder joints are just those old school peg goes into those holes. It's not a cup, so whether you like that or not, that's up to you. Alright, so next up is the arm. Overall, the build here is pretty much old school high grade. You're just sandwiching bits between parts. That's about it. There's a lot of polycaps as you'd expect in all of the joints, and thankfully most of the silver is undergated, so you're not getting too many nubs, which is pretty good. This right here is pretty much what you get when you're down to the last of the build. So you pop the hand in ball joint into the forearm like so. We've got the shoulder section here. Now, I will mention the peg that attaches into this arm is made of that brittle plated plastic, so be careful of that joint up there. That is the arm when it is complete, and again, the silver, not so bad in here. Onto the backpack now, and almost reiterating a point I just made, I'm so used to modern kits that the backpack on some of them that have wings is almost like 1/3 or half of the build. That's not the case here. These wings were done in literal minutes. They didn't take long at all. Not too many parts, but there are some moving aspects. Typical kind of Hyakushiki backpack right here. We do have this little section that pops out from above like so, and this bit just kind of moves ever so slightly. Besides, that's just ball joints that do move them out, so if you're hoping to kind of bring them forward like cool dynamic wings, they don't. They're always kind of just pointing out towards the back. Next up in here is the head. Again, super simple, just 5 pieces in total, including the antenna round back. There are 3 stickers for the eyes, front, and rear camera. And even though it is a simple build, the payoff is not too bad. It looks pretty cool. We do have a wicked seam line down the side, but that is what old school kits were like. And overall, not too bad. Choice of eyes as well, you can have red or silver. So on to the final assembly right now, and this is already given silver Hyakushiki vibe. So yeah, we've got ball joints for the hips. They snap on quite nicely. Of course, they will be limiting the articulation in future. Again, ball joint for the waist doesn't really do much once locked on there. The arms are not ball joints. The only things that aren't, they're just pegs which attach in just like so. And like so, feel a little bit on the weirdly loose side. Then we've got the backpack. This is not your standard Gunpla adapter. These holes are super widely spaced apart. There we go. And finally popping on the head. And overall, definitely a very old school build. I will be blatantly honest, I didn't enjoy it all that much, but the end product does look really unique, so it's got that going for it. Just definitely quite old school, high grade build. Alright, so here we go, and finally we do have the Delta Zayin complete. By the way, it is Zayin. I just read the katakana in the box. I thought it said Zayin by looking at the English, but no, it's the Delta Zayin. Now, this is definitely a mixed bag, and I'm gonna get the negative out of the way first when it does come to the aesthetics, and then we'll stick to the positive points. So we'll mention right here, this is not the head I built during the build. That was actually the standard Delta or the Delta Plus head, which makes this the Delta Zayin Essence. So I actually swapped it to this one right here, which is the actual Delta Zayin head, which is a lot nicer and there's more to the build. And that does lead into the first point I would make about this kit. When I realized there was another head to build, I audibly groaned. This was not a fun build at all. It's very old school. So if you've built the high-grade Delta or the high-grade Delta Plus, you may kind of know what you're getting here. This is a very simple older kit, and it does suffer from a lot of old-timey things like just seam lines all over the place and a kind of old school, not too entertaining build. I didn't really enjoy it too much, and the kit you get in the end is okay at best. So that's kind of the negative aspect. However, there is a pretty huge positive aspect to this kit aesthetically, and you can see it right now yourself. This silver coating on this kit, or the silver plating, is absolutely gorgeous. I am blown away. Usually when it does come to plated kits, they can be a little bit sketch. Case in point being the high-grade Gundam Phoenix, mainly because it does seem like when Bandai designed that kit, they didn't really think too hard in regard to the nub placement. It was originally the Unicorn Gundam, then the Banshee, which is white plastic, then black plastic, which cleans up relatively okay, especially the white plastic. Gold doesn't clean up. If you try to file anything, it's ruined even more. However, this is based on a kit that was ready to be plated, so that does mean there's a lot of undergating on this. The plastic underneath is in a kind of light gray, so even if there is surface nubs here and there, they're not that bad, but again, mainly undergated. But it is the kind of finish to this particular plating that blows my socks right off my feet. I thought it was going to be a mirror finish, but it's not. It's a semi-chrome, which does mean even though it is chromed out, it doesn't directly reflect, which means it doesn't look so bad, it doesn't take fingerprints as readily, and it does kind of minorly mirror the light while still diffusing it. You do see some reflections, but not clear reflections, and it works out nicely. The new head on here looks cool too, and there is elements that would have dated all the way back to the Hakushiki, which are beautiful. The design of the legs I've always loved since back then. The way you've got the exposed frame in the bottom of the shins, and the sharp armor over it, the overall geometric layering has always looked great. So yes, it does look very, very beautiful, but the kit it is based on is so old, dated, and not very, well, beautiful itself. So you do get a bit of a mixed bag. It's a really nice, beautiful coating and a couple of nice parts on a really not so great kit. But overall, it does look beautiful, and sometimes that's what counts. Inside the box of this kit, we did get a whopper of a sheet of stickers, but these really aren't the worst in the end. There are multiple eye stickers because there are two heads, with a little bit of an option for the heads. The red and the blue stickers up here, those are for on the head cameras again, and these ones over here are for on the rifle. There's a whole bunch of various black ones that I did not use, and there are some interesting silver ones. For example, some of the black ones were for using inside of the vents here, which to me seemed almost kind of pointless. It's black enough in there. Some of the larger black ones were for on these raised segments right here, which again, this shield is part of the optional build for the Delta Zayin Essence, which is more of a standard Delta Plus, which more than likely you may not be building unless you just really wanted that version. Because there is a unique shield in here for actually using with the actual Delta Zayin, which looks a little bit more crazy and cool, especially because you can change out these silver blades for cool clear red ones, but we'll take a look at that later. As well as the stickers, we do have one little logo in here as well, which is actually quite cool. However, if you've ever tried sticking stickers on a shiny kit before, you'll realize that it'll do look double as bad as they tend to look on a standard kit, but because this is a review, I'm going to try it out. If it wasn't, I wouldn't put it on the kit. Anyway, there it is attached on, and as you can see, stickers just look like they're kind of floating there when you attach them onto a metallic. They don't look good at all. And speaking of that metallic, I just noticed just how nicely this catches the light. Now, there's my hand beside it, and as you can see, in the reflection, you can kind of see it's a little bit not so crispy of a reflection. So even though this is my hand right beside it, you can't actually see the reflection of my greasy burger gripper in there. It's just a nice diffuse color, so you can really play with the light with this kit. And also, speaking of greasy burger gripper, I'm not actually getting too much in the lines of fingerprints on this, even though I'm just straight up touching it, so not so bad compared to other plated kits too. Overall, it is a very, very nice reflective paint that is on this kit. It just would be nicer if it was on a bit of a nicer kit. So jump now into the accessories, and there's absolutely everything that comes with the high-grade Delta Zayin, and that's quite the little armory right there. So this is split up into equipment for pretty much both forms. That's the Delta Zayin and the Delta Zayin Essence. As for the Delta Zayin, we've got the shield, the rifle, extra parts for using with the shield, as well as a pair of beam sabers over here. When it comes to the Delta Zayin Essence, we've got a shield and a rifle back there, as well as the optional head for swapping it to the Essence. Oh yeah, we also have a pair of chromed out beam sabers, that's for the Essence. This whole big block section right here, which is for parts forming it into its Wave Rider or flight form. And we do have a bunch of optional hands, that is 4 extra on top of the 2 widespreads already attached, which is very, very nice. And we do have a pair of adapters for attaching the weapons onto. So as my whole purpose right now is to get as many of these kits built as possible, I'm going to rush through the accessories fairly quickly. So in here we do have a whole load of stuff. This box right here is everything we're going to use to parts format a little bit later on. We do have a grand total of 6 hands in total in here. So what I've got attached on is a pair of fists. So these are full-on fists, so they don't actually have a hole in them like you would see with standard holding hands. I'll also mention there's only 5 backs for the hands, whereas there is 6 hands, so that's why this one doesn't have a back. On top of that, then we do have a pair of widespread hands. These are quite messy when it does come to clean up. And 2 holding hands, but this is not a pair. So you've got one right hand for holding beam sabers and one right hand for holding beam rifles. So if you had dreams of holding weapons in the left hand, well, those dreams are crushed. So because of the actual silver finish on this, it is a little bit hard to actually get it in focus and to see what it looks like. Anyway, that right there is the alternate head, a very Hyakushiki or Delta Plus looking head. This is for the Delta Zayin Essence. Also for the Delta Zayin Essence, we do have a pair of 2 beam sabers with chromed out handles. That is pretty cool. However, these don't hold that great onto the included beams, which more than likely are for the Delta Zayin beam sabers. The shield for the Essence looks like this right here. Again, these little segments should be in black. If you wanted to add these stickers on, around on the bottom, there is all the details. So of course, more than likely for a Delta Plus or something like that for the transformation. That little section right there, that's for attaching onto the forearm, and those little side bits, those are for attaching the beam sabers in when they're not in use. So it kind of looks like they still work as a bit of a beam gun while in there. This right here is the beam rifle for the Essence version, so the more standard Delta Plus looking one. It is all navy blue up top. We do have a sticker there for the side, and the handle is in gray and can fold away just like so. Next up in here, we've got the equipment for the standard Delta Zayin. So here we've got 2 beam sabers. The handles are in dark navy blue that is pretty much black. These then can slot down inside just like so. And just like with the other version, these are beam guns, I'm assuming, from underneath, except it comes out not the beam saber side, but the underside. Anyway, this right here is the shield for the Delta Zayin. Again, this looks so good. That reflective paint does look incredible. This is all brand new for this kit right here, so the mold is a little bit nicer than what we would have seen on everything else. These parts do move up just like so. They have 2 points of articulation, so can move a little bit like so. They are C-clips, so yeah, can fall off quite easily. And these have a pretty cool feature. You can actually remove these silver segments, which are just a kind of injection silver with a little bit of glitter in them, so they do look quite nice. So they just pull out the sides like so, and you can instead replace them with these clear red parts, which do actually have silver stickers on them, which is a funny little bit of a kind of thing you have to do. Sticking stickers on a clear part is something I don't think I've ever done on a gunpla. These just slot in exactly the same way as the silver ones, so now we've got some clear red sections instead. And to attach this, we've got a little bit of peg on the back, and you just throw that into this little hole around on the elbow. Pretty simple, and that is what it looks like attached. Next up, we have the beam rifle. Once again, we do have a green sticker in there. It's a pretty simple design. It does have a little bit of a sliding mechanism, kind of like you would see with Zeta Gundam. As far as I know, this is actually right from the Zeta Gundam. The handle can collapse in just like so. Move around, and there is this little bit of a flip out bit around back, but as far as I know, that's not actually for using on this kit. That's for the standard Zeta Gundam. When it comes to attaching this into the hand, it is the sandwich style, but there is a little bit of a peg in there, which makes it easy to line up, and it attaches in very, very solidly and very, very nicely. So that actually works out very, very well. There are 2 of these little adapters, even though you only need one for storing this rifle when it's not in use. And that is for popping it up on the wing in this little slot right here, but I'm just gonna jump right on into equipping it in the arm. As for attaching this into the arm, then it's simple. It's just pop off the hand you don't want and pop it on. It holds on reasonably okay, but trying to get this even into a simple pose, well, it's not really going to happen. The articulation in here is not the greatest, and speaking of which, let's jump on into it. So now jumping on to the articulation, it's going to be the usual pose to test out what it can do. The overall comment on the build right here is, it seems fine out of box. Nothing's really dropping. This is all a polycap build, so it does have the kind of squishy feel to all of its joints. But as it stands, it's standing up fine, but it's hard to tell how it will actually kind of deal with weight over time. I guess we'll know once we load up all of its heavy equipment. Anyway, usual pose time. So when it comes to the usual pose, again, it's got a lot of squishy joints and a couple of kind of stiff ones too, like the shoulder, so it ended up popping out on me. The shoulders on this kit are pegs, which is a little bit of an unusual design, and they're also very shallow pegs so they can pop out quite easily, especially because we've got large shoulder armor which can kind of leverage them off. The hips here are ball joint hips, which does mean it limits the outward movements to the legs, but still it can get nicely into a decent enough lunge. All things considered, in the end it didn't really do all that bad. This right here is how it kind of pulled off the pose, and again, you can't really criticize too much about it. It is a 13-year-old kit. It does feel a little bit squishy, but at the same time the range of motion's not too bad. Even this foot is almost making its way flat onto the ground while it is standing like that. And with something like a Delta, you're not really going to keep it on the ground that often. The only thing that is a bit weird is the shallow shoulder attachments. There is no ab crunch at all, but it still makes up nicely with the way it can kind of bend over itself like so. Again, not too bad at all. The only loose part issue I had was this right here. This is just a little segment which attaches into the forearm, and it's only loose on one side, which is odd. So it just pops out of here. It has popped out on me a couple of times, so it may need a little bit of cement or something like that just to wedge it in there. Even a bit of blue tack would probably hold it in and not damage the silver around. If I did use some kind of cement, you'd be at risk of damaging that. So that's probably what I'm going to do. On this side, it actually holds in fine, which is a little bit on the odd side. So this right here is also a kit that does have a little bit of a transformation, so we might as well try that out. So basically what we're going to be doing is harvesting parts and popping them onto this because it is a parts formation, so not a full transformation. You pull off the butt flap, remove the two side skirts, you pop off the wings, the arms, the backpack. Man, you just strip this thing absolutely down. You might as well unbuild the entire kit. It's time to start loading things up onto this little parts formation unit. There's the backpack, the butt flap. The arms then slide on here like so. At this point, I will mention there isn't enough silver backs for all of the hands in here, so I just left it off this here fist. So it's just not getting one. And these alternate shoulders attach on here. So these are not shoulders that were on the actual Delta Zayin. These are new ones just for the parts formation. Same here, this is a new butt flap. Actually, no, this one's a crotch flap. This wouldn't be a Zeta style transformation without this going on, so you need to collapse the feet down, and then the usual kind of lightning bolting the shape of the legs backwards, just like this. The legs then pop on the side. I can kind of see why this is a parts formation because this would be a very intricate transformation for the legs to move outwards and upwards like so. Again, very Zeta-y. There are some elements which are kind of annoying, like you have to remove some small parts that you're going to have to make sure not to lose. This happens on both the side skirts as well as the wings. The wings then attach onto these little bits, but these don't have any articulation, so that's good that it won't be moving around the place all the time. On transforming on you, then you whip out the wings just a bit like that. The shield then pops onto the underside just like so. Then you pop this little bit on to lock it in position. And this one final little piece, which was not part of the actual Gundam, so it adds on like so. So there it is complete, and just kind of like with the rest of this kit, this kind of has an overarching kind of thing about it, and that is the process of doing that was no fun at all. It's just a parts formation, but the end result is an absolutely beautiful Wave Rider, especially in that nice shiny titanium. That looks so good, and it is also rock solid. It's not something that's going to untransform on you all the time and you're just trying to actually pop it in a little bit of a pose or something. That is pretty cool. That is a nice Wave Rider. Hold on, I change the focus here so we get a little bit more of a crispy look at it. There we go. That is exceptionally nice, especially all of the little kind of Zeta style detail in there. The armor is a little bit on the plain side, but that silver just catches the light so nice. That is cool. That worked out nicely. Next up, you can stick the beam rifle in underneath. Hold on, wrong one. We have two in here, so this can stick into the crotch just like so, and that's a nice place to keep your weapon. And finally, the attachment point for attaching it onto an action base is back there, and it recommends an action base 5. But what I've got here is a little bit of a combination of an action base 5 and an action base 6. Or should I say an action base 4 and an action base 5. And there we go. That is it complete. That really is impressive looking when finished. So anyway, that right there is it for the review, and this right here is an X-Silver tier kit, which is kind of funny and fitting because it is one silver Gundam. Actually, it's not a Gundam. One silver Gundam looking mech. When it comes to the aesthetics, sure, this is an older kit, and at its core and at its base and at its foundation, it isn't the most incredible looking, but it's what Bandai have done with that silver coating that just really works. I expected a more glossy kind of typical silver coating, but this is very premium. It catches the light in a nice, semi-diffuse sort of way, and it always looks good grabbing the light. That and all the kind of facets and angles to the almost hyakushiki delta look just works. It really does just work. The highlighting in red, cherry on the top. The articulation on this kit is not good at all. Ball joints where you don't want ball joints, and ball joints lacking where you would like ball joints. The shoulders aren't great, the hips aren't great. Overall, you're not going to be getting very dynamic poses out of it, but it still works out decently. It actually pulled off the usual pose very, very well, which I didn't expect, but in practicality, you don't get the greatest poses. When it comes to the accessories in here, this wins with sheer quantity. It's just so much. You've got two choices of a build, that's the Delta Zayin or the Delta Zayin Essence. You've got a set of equipment for both, and a whole slew of hands on top of that, which is nice. Now you do have to parts format for the transformation, so those are accessories too, but the resultant transformation is really solid and looks beautiful. Almost an alternate build with the amount you have to strip back, but it turns out looking great in the end. Lastly then, when it comes to the build, this was not fun to build at all, I felt. This may be completely subjective, but it is very old school and from a point where high-grade gunpla didn't appeal to me at all. It's a lot of polycaps that are very squidgy, there isn't really anything too interesting engineering-wise to it, and it's just a simple old-school high-grade build. That and there's a lot of undergating to deal with because of the shiny surfaces, which is a good thing, meaning you don't get nubs, but the overall build is quite tedious and there is a lot of cleanup on certain aspects like the hands. Not the worst by any margin, but not the best either. All in all, if you do love yourself a hyakushiki clone, don't mind older school high-grade kits and just want a nice shiny silver mecha model kit, or you just loved Gundam Silver Bullet, I say go for it. But if you're not within that little margin, I say give this kit right here a miss. There's a lot better places and a lot better hyakushikis to put your money into. Anyway, as always, that's it for the review. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews, and I will see you next time. As always, this video right here and every single video I make would not be possible without each and every one of you guys who watches this video. And special thanks at the end of this video right here to those who support on the channel memberships as well as over on Patreon, including Caleb Engelhart, Joe, OG59061, Scotty Thomas, and Simon.